Disney's trading card game Lorcana is officially out, so you can now sit down with friends to crack open your starter decks and get playing. But if this is your first time playing or you need some extra tips to get you started, this video is going to tell you everything you need to know. So, I'm Maddie from Dicebreaker, and this is how to play Lorcana. In Lorcana, 2 or more players are racing to be the first to collect 20 lore and win the game. Through the help of iconic Disney characters, the classic songs they sing, and a few helpful items they'll wield along the way. You'll play as illumineers, keepers of important lore from famous Disney stories, each with a custom deck of cards that you'll be drawing from. Your deck, whether it's a starter deck you've bought already, pre-built, or one that you've constructed yourself, will be made up of at least 60 Lorcana cards. You can never have more than 4 copies of a card with the same name in your deck, so no matter how much you love Pongo, you'll only ever have a max of 4 copies in one deck. Bear in mind that there may be multiple cards that reference one character but have different names. That means if you have 4 copies of Aurora Dreaming Guardian, you can still have up to 4 Aurora Briar Rose cards as well, as the names of the cards are still different from each other. The other restriction you'll need to bear in mind is that a deck can only be made up of 1 or 2 colours of ink maximum. There are 6 colours of ink in Lorcana: Amber, Amethyst, Emerald, Ruby, Sapphire, and Steel. Each colour of ink will provide access to different tools and specialities while also having other limitations. You'll need to find the ink colour or combination of the two that best suits your playstyle. These starter decks that release with the launch of the game give us a few hints as to each ink's colour's playstyle. The Ruby and Emerald deck mixes the aggressive and damage-focused play of Ruby with the controlling and denial-focused abilities of Emerald, for example. But the Steel and Sapphire deck is more focused on getting extra ink in your inkwell and playing big, expensive characters. No one colour is limited to just one playstyle, and by mixing that ink colour with another, you'll unlock brand new strategies and synergies that might not be possible with other combinations of ink. The best way to find your preferred colours of ink is to try out different decks and see which playstyle suits you best. Before we get really stuck into how to play, it's important to take a look at the different elements you need to understand on your Lorcana cards. There are 4 different types of card in Lorcana, each with their own specific rules. Let's begin with the card type you're going to play a lot of, the character card. Here we have a character called Aurora Dreaming Guardian, who has a lot for us to look at. All cards have a cost. It tells us how much ink you have to pay to play the card. Then we have the inkwell icon, which lets us know it can be placed in our inkwell, using it as ink to play other cards. Cards that can't be used as ink don't have this golden frill around their cost, and are instead surrounded by a generic hexagon. Then we see the name of the character and their version name underneath that. For example, this Dreaming Guardian version of Aurora is a different card to Aurora Briar Rose. Then we see the classification of the card. This Aurora is classified as Floodborn, Hero, and Princess. These are keywords that can be referenced by other cards, like for example, if this card is a villain. Next, you'll see this little symbol which indicates the card's ink type out of the 6 types we mentioned earlier: Amber, Emerald, Sapphire, Amethyst, Ruby, and Steel. Aurora's ink type is Sapphire. A big chunk of the card is devoted to the character's abilities and effects. These are the special rules that apply to that card. On a character, this will usually have a story-based name, like Aurora's Protective Embrace. Your other characters gain Ward. Some abilities are common in the game and are bolded. For example, Aurora's rule text references the Shift ability and the Ward ability. Pay attention to these bolded keywords as they'll show up a lot. We'll explain those in depth later on in the video though. Here are some things that you will only see on character cards: strength, how much damage the character deals during a challenge, and willpower, how much damage it takes to banish this character from play, and the character's lore value, how much lore you gain when this character quests. Lore is represented by these little white icons at the bottom right of the card. Not every character has them, but those that do will generate lore equal to the amount of these white icons whenever they quest. And here's a fun little bonus that has no effect on play. This little symbol at the bottom of your card tells you how rare it is. It shows you how likely you are to find that card in a booster pack and will likely give you an idea of how difficult it will be to find those cards when you're deck building. Now that we've explained the sections of a character card, let's quickly touch on the 3 other card types you'll be playing. A lot of them have the same parts we've already mentioned on character cards, but you should know the subtle differences between them. First, item cards. Item cards enter play just like a character card and stay on your board between turns. They usually have an effect on them that can be triggered multiple times throughout a game. Stolen Scimitar, for example, can be activated to give a character extra strength for the rest of the turn. Coconut Basket here has an effect that triggers automatically whenever you play a character. Then we have action cards. Action cards don't stay on the board when you play them. Instead, you resolve their effects and then immediately discard them. Ransack, for example, will have you draw 2 cards and discard 2 cards. Then, once its effect is resolved, you place the Ransack in the discard pile as well. And finally, you have the song cards. Song cards are very similar to action cards, but they have an extra special way to play them. These cards are played right away, just like you would with an action card. In this case, Be Our Guest would cost you 2 ink and then allow you to search for a character card on the top of your deck. You could pay the ink cost of your song card in the same way you would for any other in the game, or you could have a character who is in play sing it. To do this, you'll exert that character instead of paying the card's cost. The only restriction is that the character you choose to sing your song has to have a cost equal to or greater than the cost of the song. For Be Our Guest, we need a character who costs 2 or more ink, as that's the cost of the Be Our Guest card. Once you've got your deck built and you're ready to play, you'll need to set up the board for your game. Each player will place their deck shuffled and face down on their side of the table, leaving room in the middle for the cards they play and a space off to the side where they'll discard their cards. You'll also need something to keep track of each player's lore. There's an official app you can use, a playmat that's included with every starter deck, or each player can track their lore with dice, tokens, or anything that counts up to at least 20. You can even just write it down on a piece of paper if you want it. Once you've got everything in place, both players will draw the top 7 cards of their deck to form their starting hand. These are the cards you'll have access to at the start of the game. Once you've drawn your 7 initial cards, you do have a chance to change it by doing what most card games call a mulligan. In Lorcana, you can pick any number of cards you don't want in your starting hand and put them on the bottom of your deck. Then, draw cards equal to how many you got rid of to form your final starting hand, and then reshuffle your deck. When you're playing your first ever game, it might be difficult to know what makes a good starting hand. Just make sure you've got a few cards with the golden frill around their cost that allows them to be played as ink, and that the cards you're holding aren't too expensive to play. If they all cost loads of ink, you won't be able to do anything on your starting turns. Each game of Lorcana takes place over a series of turns. You can technically play Lorcana with a group of any number, each player with their own deck, but for the purpose of this video, we're going to assume that you're playing a standard one-on-one game against a single opponent. Don't worry though, if you want to play with more players, the rules will work exactly the same. You'll just have more opponents' turns in between each of yours. Every turn is made up of 4 phases, 3 that quickly pass by at the start of your turn, named Ready, Set, and Draw, and 1 where you'll be doing most of the actual playing, called the main phase. At the start of your turn, you'll ready. This means that any unreadied cards on your side of the table, which means any card that is rotated 90 degrees to its side, goes back to their ready state. A card is ready when it's upright and facing towards you. Next, you'll set. In the set phase, any abilities on cards you control that happen at the start of your turn will now take effect. This is also when you should take note of any characters you control. Characters can only be used when they've been on the board since the start of your turn, because when they're played, it takes a while for their ink to dry. So unless they're here now, you won't be able to use them this turn. Next up, the draw phase is very simple. Just draw a card from your deck. The first player on their very first turn skips this phase though. That stops them getting an advantage for going first. Once the very first turn is finished, you'll always draw a card in this phase from then on. Then we have the main phase. Now, this is where most of the action happens. During the main phase, you can play a card, use a character ability, use an item, quest, or challenge. That might sound like a lot right now, but don't worry, we're going to break it all down. First, let's talk about ink. Ink is your currency that you use to play cards in the game. The ink cost of every card you play is in the top left-hand corner. Around that cost, you'll see one of two things, either a plain golden hexagon or this frilly golden circle. A frilly golden circle denotes cards that can be played into your inkwell. At any point during your main phase, a max of once per turn, you can play one of your cards from your hand that bears that golden circle face down on your side of the table. These face down cards on your side of the table are what's known as your inkwell. You'll be able to use your ink in your inkwell to play cards on your turn, and each of those face down cards represents one ink. Cards in your inkwell enter play ready and can be used as soon as you've put them there. The first thing you'll probably want to do after that is play a card from your hand. Using the ink you laid down earlier, you can exert these to play the cost of cards in your hand. Exerting is the act of turning a card 90 degrees so it sits horizontal on the table. It shows that a card has been used and is no longer ready. Character cards come in ready, so upright and vertical, but cannot be exerted yet this turn. Their ink isn't dry yet. Items, however, can be used straight away, so the stolen scimitar can be exerted on the same turn you play it to reap the benefits right away. Similarly, action cards will trigger the moment you play them. You resolve their effect and then place them in your discard. Fire the Cannons, for example, allows you to deal 2 damage to a character and then is discarded. Songs work in the same way, triggering their ability and then going to your discard pile. So play Mother Knows Best, return a chosen character to their player's hand, and then put the song card into your discard pile. Once you have your cards on the table, and if your character's ink is dry, which happens after one turn as a reminder, then you can move on to actions. First up is questing. This is how you gain lore and win the game. To send a character on a quest, turn them sideways to exert them, then count up their lore value, adding it to your lore counter. You can send multiple characters on a quest during your turn, adding up all the lore they collect, but only if they're ready. Some characters have abilities that trigger when they go on a quest too, so make sure to activate those. For example, when Moana quests, other princesses under your control can then ready up. The other main action you can do is challenging. This is how you can get rid of other powerful characters an opponent controls. Exert a ready character and declare who they're challenging. You can pick from any of your opponent's controlled characters, but they must also be exerted. For example, Pascal is exerted from questing, so Aurora can challenge him. For this, you're checking their strength against the opposed willpower. Aurora has 2 strength and Pascal only has 1 willpower, meaning Pascal will suffer 2 damage, taking him over his maximum of 1 and sending him to their discard pile. This is called being banished. However, the opposed character always hits back too, meaning Aurora will take 1 damage from Pascal as well. As she has 5 willpower though, it's not enough for her to leave the game just yet. But damage stays on cards between turns, so she's now a little weaker if someone wanted to come after her. You can keep track of all the damage a character takes by placing a token on them or marking it with dice. And remember, you can usually do only one of these main actions with a character. They can only either quest or challenge, not both, as once they're exerted from one, they cannot do the other. So choose wisely what each character needs to do on your turn. You can also do all of the main phase actions in any order you choose. You might want to quest with one character before challenging another, or use an action to draw cards before deciding which card to put in your ink pot. The order is always up to you, and the order in which you activate certain abilities will sometimes decide how good your turn is. Learning how to sequence certain abilities and actions is an important part of playing trading card games like Lorcana. Once you finish all your actions or you no longer wish to take any more, your turn ends and it moves to the next player to begin both phases from the top again. Play continues like this until one player reaches 20 lore and wins the game. So that's a full go in Lorcana. A game will likely start with simple cards as they're cheap to get out early on, but as you build up your inkwell, you'll start to bring out more characters with more text on them. A lot of characters have unique abilities that will tell you what they do on the cards, however there are a few keywords that crop up time and again. Rush means a character can challenge on the same go they're played. Don't worry about waiting for their ink to dry, they can come in ready. However, they still need to be exerted to do so and still cannot quest. Evasive is a passive ability, which means you don't have to do anything for it to happen. It's active on its own. It means that other characters can't challenge a card with evasive unless they too share the trait. However, the evasive characters can still challenge whoever they want. Next up is Challenger. These characters get an extra bonus to their strength, but only when actively challenging. If they're defending themselves against someone else, they just use their standard strength. Support means that whenever that character quests, they add their strength to another character. This means you could quest with Hey Hey and then challenge with Pascal to add 1 extra to his strength, dealing 2 damage instead. Ward means a character cannot be chosen by characters unless it's a challenge, so some abilities that might normally target them are blocked. Characters with Bodyguard basically help protect your other characters. For example, if your opponent challenged Aurora, as long as Hercules is out and can be exerted, you can make the fight go to him instead, so suddenly their character is having to take his 3 damage instead of 1. Bodyguard characters can also enter exerted, so they're ready to help from the moment they join. Singer means a character can sing songs that would normally be higher than their ink cost. Cinderella has a 4 ink cost, but she can sing for cards up to 5, bringing in more powerful songs for less. And finally, the Shift ability allows you to get more powerful characters out for less. The Floodborn version of Aurora normally costs 5 ink, but if you place it on top of another Aurora like Briar Rose, therefore shifting that one to the Dreaming Guardian form, you only have to pay 3, as indicated on the card. Remember, there's a lot of confusing new terms and concepts you'll need to remember when learning any card game, Lorcana included. Focus on the cards you have in your hand and on the table and gradually introduce yourself to new concepts as you play. You might not be the best Lorcana player right away, but having a solid understanding of the foundations of the game will set you up for success. As the game continues to release new sets and evolve with different keywords and playstyles, things will inevitably get a little more complicated. To stay up to date with everything Lorcana, make sure to subscribe to us right here on Dicebreaker's YouTube channel. Click the bell icon to get notified whenever we put a new video live, and why not leave us a like and a comment with your favourite Lorcana card. Mine is Big Tinkerbell. There's heaps more to read about the game on dicebreaker.com as well, including a written version of our how to play, which you can quickly reference during your games. Thanks so much for watching, and we hope you have a fantastic time playing Lorcana. But until we see you next, have a lovely day.